When someone says thyroid cancer, it's easy to picture it as just one thing. But honestly, that couldn't be further from the truth. It's not a single disease at all. It's a whole spectrum of conditions, and each one has its own personality, its own rulebook, and its own outcome. So that brings up a really great question, right? How can this one tiny butterfly-shaped gland in your neck be the starting point for so many different kinds of cancer? I mean, from the ones that are highly treatable to others that are incredibly aggressive. Well, the answer is actually pretty cool and surprisingly simple. Here's the best way to think about it. Imagine the thyroid isn't just one big organ, but it's actually home to two completely different cell factories, just working side by side. And if you can understand what these two factories do, you've basically got the key to the entire thyroid cancer puzzle.
All right, so let's meet the crews in these two factories. Their jobs are different, the stuff they make is different, and, you guessed it, when things go wrong, the kinds of problems they cause are very, very different.
So on one side, you've got the follicular cells. These guys are the main workforce, right? They're producing the essential thyroid hormones that run our metabolism. The key ingredient they work with is a protein called thyroglobulin. Then on the other side, kind of sprinkled in between, are the parafollicular cells, or C cells. Their job is totally different. They make calcitonin, which is a hormone that helps regulate calcium. Now, lock those two names away, thyroglobulin and calcitonin, because they become super important clues, like little breadcrumbs, when we start looking for cancer.
Now that we've met the teams, let's talk about what happens when cancer pops up from that main crew, the follicular cells. This brings us to the most common type of thyroid cancer, and it's not even close.
Papillary thyroid carcinoma, or PTC, is the big one. It accounts for about 85% of all thyroid cancers. I mean, it's overwhelmingly the most common type, so it's the one most people are likely to hear about. And thankfully, it's also the least malignant of the bunch. So when a pathologist is looking at a tissue sample under a microscope, how do they know for sure that it's PTC? Well, they're looking for one very specific telltale sign, and it has a pretty wild name. Yep. You heard that right. The main diagnostic feature is called orphan Annie I nuclei. I know, it sounds crazy, but the story behind it is actually pretty cool. The nucleus of these cancer cells looks empty or clear in the middle. And to pathologists, it looked just like the blank, pupilless eyes of the character Little Orphan Annie from the old comic strip. It's such a dead giveaway that they can sometimes make the diagnosis based on that feature alone. And here's the most important number to know when you're talking about papillary carcinoma. The 10-year survival rate is greater than 95%. That's incredible, right? It's a slow-growing tumor, and that excellent prognosis is a huge part of its story. Okay, so our next cancer also comes from those same follicular cells. You can almost think of it as papillary's twin. But this twin, follicular carcinoma, it has a totally different way of getting around. And this is a really big deal. While papillary cancer tends to spread locally through the lymph system, follicular cancer likes to invade blood vessels. That means it has the potential to travel to distant places, like the bones or the lungs. This different travel plan completely changes the game. So a few quick things to know about follicular carcinoma. It's the second most common, making about 5 to 10% of cases. It's more common in parts of the world where people don't get enough iodine in their diet. And here's a critical point. A simple needle biopsy can't tell it apart from a benign growth. A doctor has to actually see the cancer cells invading into the tissue around them to make the official diagnosis. All right, total change of pace now. We're clocking out of the follicular cell factory and heading over to that other, more specialized shop we mentioned at the start. This is where the genetic outlier comes from. Right, this is where medullary thyroid carcinoma, or MTC, is born. It comes from those other cells, the parafollicular C cells. And that means it has a completely different origin story, it makes different things, and it's tied to a whole different set of genetic issues. So because it comes from C cells, MTC is what's called a neuroendocrine tumor. Its key markers aren't thyroglobulin, remember? They're calcitonin and another one called CEA. And this is huge. About 20% of these cases are inherited. They can be part of bigger genetic syndromes, which is why genetic screening is so important for anyone diagnosed with it. So we've covered the common one, the traveling twin, and the genetic outlier. And now we have to talk about the one at the very far end of the spectrum. The aggressive rarity.
Yeah, if papillary cancer is the best case scenario, anaplastic carcinoma is,
Well, it's the absolute worst. It's the polar opposite in just about every way, and it's the most aggressive form of thyroid cancer there is.
Thankfully, this one is rare, but its cells are undifferentiated, which basically means they've gone completely rogue. They don't even look like thyroid cells anymore. It's known for growing incredibly fast, invading everything around it in the neck. It usually affects older folks, and unfortunately, the prognosis is very poor.
All right, so we've met this whole cast of characters. Let's pull it all together, because understanding why the specific type of cancer matters so much, well, that's the whole point of this. This table just lays it all out nice and clean. You've got papillary and follicular, both from those main follicular cells. Papillary's got those orphan antinuclei and an excellent prognosis. Follicular's defined by blood vessel invasion, still a good prognosis. Then there's medullary from the C cells, making calcitonin, with a more guarded outlook. And finally, anaplastic, totally dedifferentiated, extremely aggressive,